Hello and welcome to Tableau Tutorial Part 1. My name is Michelle and I'm with the Simplilearn team. Today we're going to be learning about Tableau, what it is and why it's important. We'll talk about connecting to data and different joins. We'll look at dimensions and measures and their differences. We'll look at the Tableau interface and then we'll walk through building some dashboards. So what is Tableau? Here's a story about these two gentlemen talking about Tableau. The first gentleman comments on how the IPL Cricket League was very entertaining this year and how he believes that de Villiers scored the maximum runs. But the second gentleman says he has stats which shows that Kohli outperformed this time. How did you come up with these stats? There's a tool that helps visualize data by creating interactive charts and graphs. It's basically a business intelligence tool used by many organizations for visual data analysis. Tableau helps us gain insights by visualizing the data that you already have. So Tableau is important when it comes to visualization. It has many advantages. First, it has speed of analysis, so you can get into your data and start analyzing it very quickly. Second, it helps users be self-reliant and not rely on very difficult analytics tools to start digging into their data. Third, it allows you to do visual discovery, so as you're building, you can learn information and insights about your data. 4, you can use it to blend diverse data sets. And 5, you can use the data sets that are centralized, so after you've put together a data set, you can publish it out and more people can use it than just you. That sounds interesting. How about we visually show the stats of IPL? So first, we'll look at connecting to data. This will be the first step in Tableau. So if you've opened up your workbook and you see this page, you can click here, Connect to Data, and we're going to choose a text file, and we're going to join our deliveries data to our matches data. So when we click deliveries, it brought in deliveries, and we can click add and bring in another text file called matches. Next, we'll talk about joins. We will make use of joins when we have multiple data sets to work with. Suppose we want to join these two data sets, one of which has a team ID and what city that team is in. The other one has a team ID and tells you the name of the team. There are 4 ways to join data sets. An inner join, the resulting table contains values that have matches in both tables. So we can see here that we have Delhi and the Delhi Daredevils. We also have Chennai and the Chennai Super Kings. We have Bangalore, and then we have this team that doesn't exist in Bangalore. And so, since these two don't match, since we have 2, 2, 3, 3, but then we have 4 and 6, these two don't exist in our resulting table because they don't have matches in both tables. In a left join, resulting table contains all values from the left table and the corresponding matches from the right table. So we have Delhi, Chennai, and Bangalore, and then we have their matches. However, Bangalore does not have a match, so it is left null. In a right join, we have the opposite. The resulting table contains all matches from the right table and the corresponding matches from the left table. So we have the Daredevils, the Super King, and then we have King Punjab, and they all exist. However, number 6 does not have a corresponding city, and so that's left null. And in a full outer join, the resulting table contains all values from both tables. So we still have Delhi and Chennai, and we have Bangalore, and we have the Kings, but their corresponding nulls exist as well. So since this one doesn't have a match, it still shows up, but you get a null, and then this one doesn't have a match, it also still shows up, and you get a null. Now it's going to allow us to join our 2 different data files together. So we have to decide which field to join on. In this case, it is match ID. And then on the matches, it's just called ID. And that is ID. We'll do an inner join that will select only the records that match between the 2 fields. So it's given us some sample data underneath from our 2 things. And we look at match ID here, and where it's 1 here, we'll scroll over and see that it's 1 here for ID. If we scroll down and find a different number, so here we have 2 for ID, and we scroll over and match ID is now 2. And we have our join in place. Dimensions and measures. Dimensions are qualitative fields that cannot be aggregated. For example, batsman and batting team, etc. However, measures are numerical values that mathematical functions can work on, like batsman runs and extras. So for the case of batsman runs, you can sum up all of the runs for an entire game, or that took place in a city, or for an individual batsman, and that's how you can tell that it works with a mathematical function. Now we'll move on to the last part of dashboard designing. So we can move on to sheet 1. I will take a second and load our query. And now we have the worksheet space, and this is where we can build our visualization. This is called a worksheet. You can also build a dashboard, which is where you can put multiple worksheets together. And you can build what's called a story, which is where you can take worksheets and dashboards and put them in an order to tell a story. So on our worksheet, we'll have this space here in the middle, which is where you can build the visualization. You have columns and rows where you can drag on your data, which is here on the left. Here's our data, dimensions on top, measures on bottom. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We have columns and rows where you can drag your information and it defines where the columns go, or where the data goes to define the columns, and where the data goes to define the rows. We have places here, these are our cards, and when you drag things onto these different cards, it will do different things to your visualization. And let's talk about our dimensions and measures. So Tableau will take its best guess at what your data is. So it's guessed that all of these blue fields on the top are dimensions, and dimensions are qualitative data, so data that defines and describes the rest of your data. And so usually it can be things like city, so you can say here's a city, and then we can look at our different measures by the city that it took place in. For example, with financial data, you could pull on city and you could look at sales by city, and city is the dimension, which is a quality. And then sales would be a measure, which is something that is quantitative and it is able to be aggregated, whereas dimensions are not things you would like to aggregate. So some things can be a number, but they're still not a measure, such as a phone number. Nobody is going to want to sum up different people's phone numbers and see what the sum of the phone number is. However, you might want to look at a customer and see their phone number, and it puts it up in the dimension area. Another thing that Tableau does in this case, by default, it will make little folders for your different data sources. So we have our deliveries data source and our matches data source. If we go back to our data source section, that corresponds to our two different files. You can also look at these sample fields here, and the part where it's blue at the top represents the blue table. And if we keep dragging, we'll see the orange coming in, which represents the orange table. So here we are back at sheet 1. And let's start building our first visualization. I'm going to right click here, click rename, and we're going to call it matches in each venue. So we're going to start off by making a map. Tableau has recognized the word city here and put this little globe next to it, meaning that it has recognized it as having the geographic role of city. So if I double click on it, it maps out some cities. Now it's having a hard time mapping the cities, so we're going to click edit location, and it doesn't recognize these places, or it could exist in multiple places because it's defaulted the country to the United States. So if we change that defaulted country to India, then we have much fewer unknown fields. So we're going to focus on India and not look at these other locations because some of these are not in India, but we're going to make this visualization for India specifically. If you wanted to show what countries they were in, you can define from what field you can find the country information. So if we had two fields in here, one was city and one was country, that told you what country it was, then you would choose this from field and you'd choose that country dimension. And that would fix our problem, assuming things were spelled right and put in the right countries. In this case, we don't have country, so we have defined India, and that's where we're going to focus. Next, we're going to bring city onto color as well. And now they each have their own colors, and here's our legend. And we want these to have a different size based on how many matches they've had. So we're going to bring on ID onto size. And we want it to actually count those IDs. So we changed it to a count distinct. And now you can see the littlest ones have around 2, and then as they get bigger, this size is 20 and this size is 85. And when you hover, you can see exactly how many they have. You can adjust the size using this size marks card. Make our circles a little bit bigger. We can adjust our color by adding a border, maybe like a black border, but then changing the opacity so we can see through it a little bit for those that go over borders and start to overlap. And if we wanted to see the exact number without having to hover, we could take this ID onto label and again change it to count distinct. There we go. And now you can see exactly how many there are in each location. You can change where the labels show up by adjusting the alignment, so we could have it in the center and it kind of shows up inside their circles, but that's kind of hard to read in these smaller circles. So we could define that we always want it at the top or something like that. We could also have it say the city name. So if I drag city onto label, now it shows 9 and then the city, but if I want to change the order of that, see how it does the count and then the city? I could drag. So you saw right inside of here we have 2 that are on label, so they have this little T inside of a box. And now city is on top of count of ID. So city and then count. We could also allow people to filter. So if we click show filter here, and if we just want to look, it'll zoom in on the countries you select. So if we just wanted to look at a couple of them, then we could select individual ones. Or if we wanted to exclude certain ones, then we can make it easy to exclude. Great, so now we have our visualization for matches in each venue. Next, we're going to make another worksheet by clicking down here, and we're going to name this one Top Run Scorers. And this will allow us to be able to find who scores the top runs. So we're going to make a visualization called a tree map using this Show Me button. We haven't explored Show Me yet. Show Me will show you what visualizations you can build based on what you've selected over here. So when we selected city, it shows us that we can make maps using city. What we're going to do is look at city, and I'm going to hold Control and click Batsman, and I'm going to hold Control and click Batsman Run. And now you can see that tree map is filled in and not grayed out anymore, so we can select that. And it is showing us what batsmen have the most runs. We want the color to be based on city, so let's drag city onto color. And now we can see that it's separated out by city. And you can see that the person at the very top right with the biggest square has the most runs. But then you also get a second benefit of being able to know which city seems to have the most runs associated with it. So it looks like Mumbai has the most runs. Let's also filter this information. So let's bring on batsman runs, and then we can choose sum. And let's filter out batsmen who didn't get a total of 400 runs. There we go. So now we only see batsmen and cities that have a sum bigger than 400 runs. Okay, so we have city on label, but maybe we just want to be able to see that on hover. So we'll take city off of label, and now we just see the batsmen who have the highest runs for each city. And we'll also bring on the number of runs onto label. So now we can see the batsmen and their runs and exactly how many runs they have. You can always get to how many they have based on hover. We'll go on to our next visualization, and that's going to be win percent based on toss decision. So we're going to see which decision you make based on the toss leads to a win more often. So you can choose to bat or you can choose to field. And if you choose to bat, do you win more than if you choose to field? So let's take a look. We have our toss decision, and we also have if they won the match or not, match winner. And I'm going to control click toss decision, and we're going to select pie. So here we have a pie chart that colors it based on toss decision, which is bat and field, and makes the angle and the size of the circle based on the match winners. Now we're only going to have the angle be based on match winner or not, and then we can define the size ourselves so we can make it bigger. I'm going to change this visualization to fit the entire view so that we can see the pie better. Great, but we don't see a percentage. So let's change this sum of match winners to a table calculation. So we're going to click Add Table Calculation, and we're going to change it to percent of total. We'll close that. So now when we hover, it says 60% of the matches were won by the people who chose field, and 39% were won by the people who chose bat. Let's make this into a label as well. So I'm going to control drag toss decision onto label, and what that does is make a copy and add it to label instead of pulling it off of color. So let's see what happens if I don't hold control. So if I just drag toss decision onto the label, it got rid of it off of color and just put it on the label, and that's confusing. There's two pieces, but they don't look any different. So control drag fixes that. We'll do the same thing for that match percent of total that we made, match win percent of total. One of the benefits of having these labels here is that it allows you to be able to use this visualization even if you take a screenshot and send it to somebody and they can't hover over the top and see what everything means. Another thing you can do is annotate it, and so we can click annotate the point or the mark, and it will give you this box, and then it will put in some information that's showing up in your tooltip, and you can modify this, and we could change this so it's not bold anymore or leave it bold. And when you hit OK, it makes this box that you can move. Tells you information about that point or that mark. We can do the same thing here. And it draws a line. And this allows you to put notes about it. You can see that these parts are dynamic, so it just fills in toss decision based on your field from over here, and it will change if it changes. So will the percent match winner. So for example, this is for everybody over all time, but if we show a filter for city, it adds it to our filters card up here, and then we could filter it to just this city, and you can see that they have updated. And in this city, they have more people who have chosen to bat win the game. And so you don't end up with old static information in either place. But if you did want to make a note manually about what you think is happening here, then you can do that as well. We could also do the same thing with date. And now you could choose just what year you want to see, so just 2017. And in 2017, the field advantage was a lot higher. And here's 2016. And that's all time. Our next visualization is going to explore the idea of if you win the toss, how likely you are to win the game. So we're going to look at historical data and see what's happened in the past. So we're going to call this advantage of toss winning. So we're going to bring on all of the toss winning teams, and we're going to also bring on all of the teams that actually won. So how it works is we can see all of the teams, and then you can see if they won or not. So we're going to quickly make a couple of changes to this. The first one is this team changed its name to this team name, so we're going to group those two teams into the same group so that they are treated like just one. And we're going to create a group based off of winner. And we're going to grab the two team names by control clicking and click group, and it puts them together. Let's replace winner with our winner group. There you go. So now you can see those two teams are together. Do the same thing with toss winner. Create group. One disadvantage to creating a group is that it's very manual. And so you have to manually create the group and you have to manually update it. So if they change their name again, you have to change it again. And it's nice to have the functionality in Tableau to make those changes in case you don't have the functionality to make the changes to the data source itself. But do keep in mind that if you have to manually group things together, you have to manually keep it updated as well. Next, we're going to exclude some data. So we have this null here that we'll just click exclude on, because that would be perhaps when a winner was not declared. And we're going to remove some of these teams that have holes in their analysis. And that could happen because they didn't play all of the teams, or so there was never a match with that team. And so here, for example, they played and they could have won, or this team could have won, this team could have won, or this team could have won. But these other teams don't seem to have any matches against them. So we can come across here for the winners, and I'll control click the teams that we're excluding, and then we'll just come over here to exclude, and you can exclude a bunch at a time. It just adds it to the filters right here. So if I right click on edit filter, you can see all the teams we've excluded. And then we'll do the same thing on the toss winners. And we'll control click and exclude. And now we are left with all of the teams that seem to have available data between them. And now we want to see, of these toss winners, who won the game. So we're going to count all of the matches, and that will give us the information we need. So I'm going to grab ID and put it onto text. Now what it's doing is giving me all of the IDs. So I've got to right click on it and change it to a measure and change it to count distinct. And now it will show you how many matches fit these categories. So for this team, if they won, when this team wins the toss, then this team usually wins, which is the same team. So I'm going to widen this out so we can see the names better. So when the Super Kings win the toss, the Super Kings won the game 42 times. Let's right click here and we're going to change it to a table calculation again for percent of total. And what that is saying is that of all of the games where the Super Kings won the toss, they also won the game 64% of the time. Now, you can read this with the numbers fairly easily, but it'll be a lot easier if we can also show it in color. So I'm going to change the marks to square. And I'm going to control drag this onto color. And now we have what's called a heat map. And the color is stronger where the percentage is higher. You can see our range over here. So you can see there's a pretty clear advantage to the person who wins the toss. They tend to be the one that wins the game. When the Daredevils win the toss, the person who wins the game the most is the Daredevils. Let's take this visualization and use it to analyze a different feature of the game. So I'm going to right click on the worksheet and I'm going to click duplicate. So now we have the same visualization twice. And I will rename it to be called batting first advantage. So here, instead of toss winner, we're going to bring on batting team. But let's first create a group again. So we're going to, don't be confused by group by, that's not the same thing. We'll go to create and click group. We're going to put together, control click the team names that have merged. Okay. And let's drag. You see how it's not up here right next to batting team? That's because they put the calculated fields that we've been making outside of the folders. So if you're looking for a calculated field, you can scroll down to the very bottom. And let's drag batting group right over top of toss winner. And it will replace it right out of there. And we have our gaps again, because the toss winners that we excluded only applied to that toss winner, so I can pull off this toss winner filter. We don't need it anymore. And then we will control click on the ones with the gaps that we wanted to remove. Click exclude. Okay. And now we have an analysis showing how the batting team does. In our next visualization, we're going to explore who the leading batsman is. And this could allow you to find out who's the best if you were in charge of putting together your team. So we can take all of the batsmen and put it on row. So now we have a list of every batsman. And we can bring batsman runs onto columns, and it will sum up all of their runs. Now what we can do is sort it from biggest to smallest, and we can see who are our top batsmen. We can bring batsmen onto color, so I'm control dragging again. And then they each get their own color. One nice thing that you could do here is filter it by the team. So here we have like team 1 and team 2, but what we would be doing is filtering it on batting team. So we're going to click show filter. And so if you wanted to see, well, like this is the best overall, but let's see who was the best to ever work for this team. And then it will sort it from best down. And you can switch the team. And if we choose this one, we should choose this one as well. And then we can see who's the best. Another thing that could be really useful is seeing who's the best by year. So we can come here to date and click show filter. And now we can see this is the best overall of these years. But if we just want to see most recently who's the best, that's a very different story. So filters can be very handy for looking at a bar chart here and getting the exact information you want. We could also maybe just look at the top 5 batsmen. So what we'll do is we'll drag batsmen onto filters, and we'll create a conditional filter based on top here by field. So we'll say top 10. We wanted to look at the top 5, so we'll change that to 5. And we're looking at the top 5 batsmen based on the sum of their runs. So you could choose something else to filter it by, but we want it to be based on their runs. And we hit apply. And there we go, we just see the top 5. And again, if you just want to see the top 5 for 2017, here's the top 5 for 2017. Maybe 2016 and 2017 together, those are your top 5. Now, if we wanted to be able to change how many we see, as the developer, we could go in and change it here. But if we wanted our end user to be able to change it, then they can't, because when this is published, you can't change your filters. You can't change the filters that are the top conditional filters. We can change these filters that we show on the report called quick filters, but not this guy. We can see now that it's choosing top 5, but we can't select it. How many? So let's get rid of that card. And let's make a parameter that will allow them to select it. So create a parameter, and we're going to call this top n. We're going to make it an integer, and it's going to be a range. We'll let them choose between 5 and 30, and they can go up and down by 5. We'll click OK. So now we have here at the very bottom parameters, and we can right click on it and click show parameter control. And now we have this parameter over here called top n. It's set to 5, and then if I change it to 10, nothing's happening. And that's because we made the parameter, but we haven't put it anywhere in this sheet. So we're going to put it right inside of this filter. So you come here, and we want to choose top how many. You can do it based on a parameter, and we'll do it based on our top n parameter. Okay, so now when we change it from 5 to 10, the parameter updates the filter. So in presentation mode, the user can come in and choose how many they want to see. Now we've only let them go up to 30, but that's to your discretion. You could have this parameter do whatever you need. So we could say they can go up to 100, and that changes our parameter. Now we have all these little marks in between, and here I chose 80, 55, or you could even make it so that they don't have a step size. They just have a range, and then they have just this little slider, and it could be any number in between, but not lower than 5 and not bigger than 100. Let's remove this filter, and we will also hide this card because we won't give them the option to choose how many they want to see in this case. We'll just show them all. So, for this next visualization, we're going to look at our top 5. And we're going to see how they do over time. So again, we're going to start on by bringing on our batsmen. But we only want to see our top 5, so let's bring batsmen onto filters, and we'll do what I just showed with top 5. Now, since we don't have anything else on this visualization, it's not sure how to define the top 5. So we're going to do it with batsman runs, and we're going to have the sum of the batsman runs. So top 5 players over all time that have the highest sum of batsman runs. Highest sum of runs. So here we have them. And we're going to bring on their runs. And we'll sort them biggest to smallest. And next we're going to bring on a time element so we can see it over time. So I'm going to drag date over here. And now it's doing a line chart for with a dot for every year. And I'm going to change year from the discrete year to the continuous year so that it's an axis down here. And now we can see them over time. We can bring batsmen onto color so we can see the different color for each batsman. And here's how they're trending. And then we'll also bring the batsman runs onto label. And now you can see how many runs they had. Next we're going to take a look at finding out who our leading bowlers are. So let's bring all of our bowlers onto a visualization. One way to look at this would maybe be to see which bowlers have the least runs associated with them. So we can bring the runs up here and then sort it smallest to biggest. However, they could have very few runs associated with them because they don't bowl very often. So let's bring on match ID and change it to be a measure that is a count of match IDs. And we can see that a lot of these with the least amount of runs also have the least amount of matches. So it's not a very good indicator. We have here what's called a dismissal kind. And you can see the reasons that the batsman was dismissed. And one of them is hit wicket. So you can see any of the bowlers that hit the wicket. So let's bring dismissal kind onto filters and we'll just look at those that hit the wicket. So we have these ones that have hit the wicket, and let's see how many times they did that. So we'll actually bring on down here number of records. And we'll sort it biggest to smallest. So now we can see that this bowler has hit it twice in our limited set of data. If we include all of the dismissal kinds, except for null, so this means that they were dismissed for any of these reasons, we can see which bowlers had the most dismissals. And let's bring bowler onto color. Great, and we'll rename it. To leading bowler. And we're going to do a similar thing as we did with top 5 batsmen with bowlers. So we could start with this visualization and replace by right-clicking and click duplicate. Let's bring it to the end. And now, instead of top 5 batsmen, we can change it to bowlers. But first, let's bring in our dismissal kind and only choose the ones. So here we can click exclude, and we're going to exclude null and hit apply. So we don't have the nulls anymore, we just have the ones that were dismissed. And we're going to bring in the bowler on top of the filters, and we're going to have it be based on the top count of dismissal kind. Top 5. Great. And we'll put bowler over top of batsman. And we'll take out the sum of batsman runs. And put on our number of records. And batsman didn't get removed when I pulled bowler on top of it, so I must have accidentally pulled it in front of it. There we go, batsman's gone. Now here's a disadvantage to making a copy and then changing it, because it's like, what's happening here? But it's because batsman is still on color and sum of batsman is still on runs. So let's take number of records and put it onto runs, onto the text. And then let's take bowler and put it onto color. That clears things up quite a bit. So now we can see the bowlers over time. If we take year of date off, we can see which ones are the best overall, and we'll sort it. There we go. And then we'll put year back on by dragging date up here, right-clicking and changing it to a continuous. There we go. So now we have our top 5, and we need to rename this to top 5 bowlers. Okay. So now we have all these visualizations, and we can start putting them together into dashboards. So let's make our first dashboard. We're going to have the size be automatic, so it fills the screen here. You have some options with the different sizes. You can have it be a fixed size, or you can define the width and the height. You could also define the width and the height based on some of these presets, like a desktop browser or a laptop browser. You could have it be automatic, so it fills the space. Now this will have it fill the space on any screen, so if they're looking at a much smaller resolution, then it'll try to squish all of your visualizations into one size. So I don't recommend automatic for a lot of visualizations, because you need to have extra space. Or if you define this should be here and this should be over here, then it will all squish it all together. There's also a range where it's sort of like it's automatic and it will adjust based on what screen you're looking at it. However, there is a minimum size, and it will never be smaller than that, and a maximum size, and it will never be bigger than that. So it won't stretch or shrink your stuff too far before adding scroll bars. So here we have automatic and our first dashboard. So we're going to rename our dashboard. We're going to call it overall performance. Oh, the first one we're going to make is going to be looking at venue and run scored. Great. So this is our dashboard space. So it says drop sheets here. And then these are our dashboards. And we have other objects down here that you can also bring on. And then over here we have layout, which after you have brought things on, you can change their layout here. And it will show your item hierarchy based on how they're nested down here. So on our dashboard, we will first bring in our matches, and we will bring in our top scorers. And we have all of these different places for matches, and we have our different cities for our top scorers. And so if we go back to this sheet, top run scorer, we can do that in 3 ways. We can come down and find the right sheet and click on it to go to that sheet. We can look at our visualization and click this go to sheet, and it will take us to that sheet. We'll go back. Or we can come over here to our sheets and click go to sheet, and it will take us to that sheet. So let's take our filters off of the sum of runs so that we're showing all runs for all cities. You know what? Instead, let's just edit it so it's filtering out only those that never scored more than, say, 100. Okay, so we have a lot more in here, but it will filter out some of the lowest ones. And we'll go back to our dashboard. And now there's one thing you can do, which is called an action. And so we can click use as filter. And now when we click on a city over here, it will filter the remaining sheets on this dashboard to what you've selected. So we can see how many matches have been done in different cities, and if we want to see, well, who are our best players in Mumbai, it will filter down to the top run scorer. So that's called an action. So let's get rid of that, and we'll look at doing it manually as well. So here under dashboard, we have our actions, and you can see there are no actions in here. But then when I come and click use this filter, then we go to dashboard and actions, and now we have an action called filter 1 generated. And what that has done is made an action based off of the matches in each menu sheet, and it affects the other sheet on select. And when you unselect, see it says clearing the selection will show all values, and it's doing it based on all fields. Okay, so if we wanted to make a different action, which is a URL action, on these two sheets, when you select, it'll take you to this website. So this is the Wikipedia beginning page. But let's say we wanted to take you to a specific Wikipedia page. In Wikipedia, if you append on the name of the Wikipedia page to the end of this URL, it will take you straight to that page. And we're going to assume that there's a Wikipedia page for all these different cities. So we have city put in there. And if we hit OK, and now when we click on a city, then it will bring up the Wikipedia page for that city. So if we come back and we unselect that, and then we come over here and we pick a different city, it'll do the same thing and bring up that Wikipedia page. So right now it's if you click on either chart, it will bring up the Wikipedia page. We can edit that by maybe changing it so that it's only when you pick it in the top scorer chart. So when you select something over here, it filters the top scorer chart, but when you select on something in the top scorer chart, it brings up that city. And that's just an example, and now it's bringing up that page on a separate screen. So there we go. Now we're back. Okay. And some more things that we can do is we'll get rid of this visualization that is a legend for how big the circles are and what that means, because we have the labels right over top of the circles, so we don't need a legend for that. We'll close that. We have the capability of filtering on city right now, but when we do filter on city, it's only affecting this visualization and not this visualization. So we can change that by hovering over Apply to Worksheets and then changing it to Selected Worksheets and clicking All on the dashboard. And when I click Show All Worksheets in the workbook, you can see the rest of the worksheets that are not on the dashboard are not affected. Unselect, okay. And now when I filter these, it does it in both places. Another thing we can do to make this look a little nicer is make this a multiple values drop down. So now it's in a drop down form. We can also a horizontal object up here and put city up inside of there as kind of like a header. But we can have some more filters. So if we wanted to be able to filter by the date, we can put the date on filter there. We'll click Use All for now. Let's go back to our visualization. We'll click on the visualization we added it to and hover over Filters. And look, you can add year of date. Here it is. Let's put it up next to city. And we'll also change it to a multiple value drop-down list. And we'll also have it apply to selected workbooks all on dashboard. Okay. So now we can see the different years. If we only wanted to see maybe 2017, they both apply. Or they apply to both visualizations there. And we can have those, and we can add a blank object over here on the other side of city so that it doesn't take up quite as much space. We could put a text object up here too with the name of maybe the whole workbook or the sheet. There it is. But if we want to edit it, then we can make it bold and we can make it big. And those are some of the things we can do to update all of our different dashboard things. Our next dashboard is the one that's going to be about overall performance. We're going to change it to automatic again. And we're going to bring in information about performance. So we'll bring in the leading batsman and our leading bowler. Our top 5 bowlers will go underneath the bowler information, and our top 5 batsmen will go underneath the batsman information. You can see that any filters we had or any different legends we had are showing up here. We don't need these legends because we have the names right next to them. So let's get rid of those. When I clicked on the bowler in that last visualization, or in the last legend, it highlighted that particular bowler. So I had to unselect it before I closed it out. Okay, and then we had batting teams filter here, which we will not use. But we will use this year filter, and now if I change it, it will only affect this visualization, but I want it to affect all. So again, this is just a good habit to have to make sure all of your filters affect everything on the dashboard that you want it to affect, and that it's very clear which ones it's affecting. Let's give it some space. We can move this whole piece to along the top here. It doesn't need that much space. And we'll change this to be a drop-down filter. And it doesn't need all of the space, so we can add some blank to either side and have it a little bit more in the middle here. So now we just want to look at 2017. We can see our leading batsmen and our leading bowlers, but then you can't see it over time anymore. So let's change our minds, and maybe we only wanted to apply to worksheets, these 2 worksheets, because we want these worksheets to still show it over time. So if we click selected worksheets and we remove our top 5, now we can see that these worksheets update and these ones do not. But one thing to keep in mind is that these are the top 5 over all time, whereas these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are the top 5 for this year. And so these top 5 are not the same people, you can see, as these top 5. Well, this one is. And this one is. But it's going to change. And so that's the point, is that it's important to recognize that these top 5 could update to just the top 5 for the year we selected if we still had it applying to these worksheets. So it's just your call. Information over time, when filtered to just one period, can be not very useful. So our next dashboard is going to be about advantage. And we're just going to make it so that we can see the advantage of the toss and the advantage of batting just side by side. So let's add a blank up here, blank down here. And it just gives you a visualization where you can see the advantage of winning the toss and the advantage of batting first. One thing that we're seeing here is that we're getting a scroll bar because it's too wide to fit in the selected area. So we could change the visualization to fit width, and then it will make this shrink to fit inside the area instead of giving us a scroll bar. We'll do the same thing here, fit width. If we change it to entire view, then it will also change the height to fill this area. Entire view. There we go. So as a recap, we have looked at different ways to look at data so that you can use it to help you in your decisions. You can use it to find out who are your top scorers in which cities. You can use it to figure out who is the advantage. You can use it to help you figure out if you should choose to go to the field or to bat. You can find your leading batsman and who should be worth more to try to get them on your team. Same with bowler. And you can put them together into dashboards that are interactive, even out to websites. Thank you for joining us on Tableau tutorial today. For more information, just go to www.simplilearn.com. And if you have any comments or questions, be sure to comment below. Again, thank you and have a great day.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.